What's up? I like video games. If you're here, I'm sure you do too. And about 2 years ago, I made a 45-minute rambling session masquerading as a video, basically going down a nostalgia trip across the many games that have shaped my childhood and my general gaming early years. That video was covering, I'll say, a rough time span of 2006 to 2012 or so. I always had intentions on making a second version of that video, going over the stuff from 2013 to now, or in other words, when I first got an Xbox 360 to about now. I'm not really gonna ramble on for very long. Go watch the original video if you want a slightly more thought out intro. These are games that shaped my childhood, my later adolescence. The basic idea of the original video was that it was just influential games from my life, and this is no different. This is just the latter half when I'm now older and have a lot more game experience with a lot more different interesting games. So if you want a more fleshed out intro, you can go watch the original video. This time, I'm not really gonna separate out the games by era, because if I'm honest, after the Wii era, nothing particularly exciting happened to me that would cause any comments by me to transition in between systems. I'll just be breaking down these games by their relevant systems, but inevitably you can kind of expect me to make some kind of semi-chronological timeline with a few inconsistencies here and there because years are hard to remember and also it's not really that important. So I'm going to start with the game that I think is probably going to be the most influential on this entire list, Minecraft. Again, just like with Mario Brothers in the original video, I don't really know what I can say that hasn't already been said 1,000 times over. The soundtrack is incredible, the free-form nature of the entire game is great. I think, honestly, most of the updates that have come out of the game have also been really good. There's been a couple of questionable ones from the community's perspective, and nowadays I think they're generally doing a little bit worse with the updates than they were because, you know, they're doing this whole community mob vote thing, but allegedly they're being rigged in such a way to explain the mobs in different ways than what they actually are, which is how we ended up with the fucking god-awful Phantom of all things. Minecraft for me is kind of like that definitive game that I would just get on and play. If I had a server open with friends, I would just get on that game and just use it to pass the time if I didn't really have any other games I felt like playing, or if I had a story that I wanted to tell, or really anything. Like Minecraft was kind of one of those perfect games that I could just jump on and I could get something out of it. Whether it's a good conversation with people, whether it's just a good way to, you know, pass the time, whether it's a good way to make a little bit of linear progress in a server that we were on. Behind games like Tetris, I mean, isn't Minecraft like the second or third biggest selling game in the entire world? And you know, it's for good reason. It's because of how open world it is and because of how consistently the mechanics are and because of how much joy and fun it brings to other people, how accessible it is because you can play it on Macs, you can play it on Windows, PCs, laptops, phones, and it's also one of those games that's like only slightly more intense than other games that kind of go for a more choose your own world sort of game, something like Stardew, for example. And I will say that that jump is important enough for certain people who are not heavy into gaming to not really be into Minecraft. But if you can just get over that hurdle, like there's so much to like about the game for basically anybody. If you want to make aesthetic looking buildings, you can do that. If you want to do combat and PvP, you can do that. If you want to be a fucking electrical engineer with all of the crazy random bullshit going on with the redstone, you're able to do that. You can play the game in different ways that you feel like, whether you want to be a nomad or you want to set up a gigantic mansion, if you want to set up a town full of people, if you want to set up a trade server, if you want to set up a villager trading booth. Like there is just so much that can be done in the game because of the vast amount of unique mechanics that are important in their own right and can be used in a variety of different ways. So, you know, every other game that's going to be on this list, to some extent, you can play a lot of those games or at least get the general mechanics of the game in Minecraft, you know, and especially, you know, you bring modding into the equation and all the command blocks. And I mean, Minecraft is just like, it's just the largest game on this entire list that I have, both from a sales perspective and also just from a scope perspective. Just the amount of stuff that you can do, the longevity of the game, the crazy amount of content that's been pumped out to give inspiration to new players, just everything. This game is fucking massive, and so I would be doing it a huge disservice if I didn't at least start with that game. I'm gonna go back to the original video a little bit and pull GTA 5 from that list, because GTA 5 on the original list was basically me being like, I shouldn't have been playing this game because I was too damn young when the game came out, which is objectively correct. And I don't know that it really mattered all that much, but the reason I bring it up in this list is because a lot of the Xbox 360 and the Xbox One games that I'll be bringing up on this list, they are important to me because of the people that I played them with. A lot of the games I specified in my original video, a lot of them were single player, right? Most of them were single player old games from the 90s and from the early 2000s. Now, all of these other games that I'm bringing up on the Xbox 360 and the Xbox One, these are games that I played with my friends and had just so many memories that, like, I wish I had better brain capacity to be able to store and remember a lot of them. Because this game is over 10 years old And I've technically been playing it for almost that entire time, so there's a lot of memories that I've formed. From the updates that have come through, to all the glitches that me and my friends would do to get infinite money. The story mode I didn't play like a ton of, but I did have fun whenever I was playing it. When I finally got the game on PC for the very first time in... God, when did the game even come out for PC? 2017 or something? I don't know. That's not important. I got it on a laptop that couldn't run it, which sucked. I have a different PC that I got after the fact that also couldn't run it. And by the time I got this new computer that I'm recording all of this on, that definitively could handle it, now I just don't really care all that much, to be honest, just because I can't get my character back, and I don't get nearly as much fun out of the game when there's modders running around everywhere and just ruining it for everybody, and when most of the friends that I did play the game with are like off being adults and shit and going and doing their own thing, and here I am sitting in my fucking room just like recording a voiceover for a video that's gonna get 15 views, right? You know, stuff like that. So I can't say that I'd really go back to the game anymore, because a lot of the current friends that I play games with don't play this game, and I don't really want to have to rebuild up that entire catalog of character levels and stats and fashion and vehicles and all this other shit when GTA 6 is like metaphorically right around the corner, relatively speaking to how long GTA 5 has been out. Honestly, during the later part of GTA 5's life cycle, when they were really, really hyper-focused on the heists, that was kind of what we were spending a lot of our time on. But we'd still have really long sessions of GTA where we'd be driving around for 30 minutes waiting for some dude who's late as shit to get on the game. They'd get on the game, we'd go do a couple of missions of heist prep, inevitably fail a couple of times, get frustrated with each other, somebody has to go AFK, they come back, we play in the open world a little bit more, and then we finally complete the missions we want to complete, and then we just go about driving in the open world again and just dicking about for a little bit. And it was kind of this balance between just playing in the open world, either in a private session or with a bunch of random people. There was vibes, just driving around. There was fun combat between everybody who, you know, was in the group. And then we would lock the fuck in and go and do some heists. And I say lock the fuck in even though we would fail a bunch of them, but, you know, we'd lock in as much as like 16-year-olds were capable of locking in on a game like this. GTA 5 is, I mean, probably maybe the second biggest game on this list. I mean, just again from the longevity of how long the game has been out and just the crazy amount of content that's been added. I mean, the jump from the Xbox 360 version of GTA 5 to the Xbox One version was like the best graphical fidelity jump that we had ever seen from the same game, at least for my friends and I, which was pretty damn impressive to watch. And, you know, being able to go in first person and having all of the lights underneath the cars that you could add, which for some reason just didn't seem like it was on the 360 version. I don't really know. There's just so much to the game. And sometimes you're like, you know, I'm tired of driving around and being a fucking criminal, so I'm gonna drive and respect traffic laws and go and see a movie. And you could just do that, right? And I mean, you didn't really get much out of it, but the fact that you could do it was just funny to us, and that's really all that matters when you're talking about a video game, right? Is that it's fun and enjoyable, and that the person who is doing the thing gets some level of joy out of it. And as long as that joy isn't at the expense of other people. I'm not gonna get philosophical with GTA 5. This game's incredible, and I can't wait for GTA 6. I guess that's why this game is in this list. Again, Call of Duty Black Ops 2. Now this game is very, very influential to my growing up, because Black Ops 2 to me represented a definitive moment in the COD history where a lot of the older people who were playing COD from your World at Wars and your Call of Duty 4s and your Modern Warfare 2s and stuff like that. Black Ops 2 was that game, that was like the cutoff line for a lot of people where they were like, nope, I'm not dealing with this anymore. Because like the only microtransaction stuff we had in the older games was DLCs for maps, which was, I think, only a Black Ops 1 thing, with some minor exceptions for like whatever happened in Modern Warfare 2 and 3. And then Black Ops 2 came out and they were like, here's multiplayer maps that you can pay for, here's DLCs that can include multiplayer maps and zombies maps that you could play, but also here's weapons skins and camos that you could buy that didn't do anything. And then the first only for that game being able to purchase the Peacekeeper, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So I can understand how that was a very controversial thing for a lot of people. Personally, for me, that was literally my upbringing into Call of Duty. I think I played Black Ops 1 Kino der Toten one singular time before this, but like that only kind of counts. Black Ops 2 is my definitive like jumping off point on Call of Duty games. And frankly, I'm happy that's where that started, because this game still feels really good. When you get the chance to play it, and when you get the chance to play the game in isolation and not have to deal with a bunch of random people on the internet that may or may not even be playing the game, like, the game is really good. The way that its physics engine works, the way that the entire engine for the game works, is something that I really enjoy. And personally for me, after like Black Ops 4, during like the Cold War-ish era, or like the around that time, like around the 2020s Modern Warfare era, when they changed the engine, there's something about the way the animations worked for those games moving forward that I didn't like. So, and I think a part of that is because of the fluidity and the smoothness, and then I guess, you know, kind of contradictory is also like a little bit of the rigidness of Black Ops 2's engine, or, you know, whatever engine Black Ops 2 was on, I should say, because I doubt they invented the engine. You know, I doubt that engine was invented for that game. Point is, that engine was really great, and I love that that's where I started off with the game. Multiplayer was insanely fun. I didn't understand the concept of camo grinding at all, obviously, because I hadn't played a Call of Duty game before, but I really, really think Black Ops 2's, like, camos, a lot of the base ones are, like, bad. The Mastery camos, though, are second best to Black Ops 3 in my opinion, and I think honestly they have the best diamond of any Call of Duty game in my personal opinion, so that was incredibly fun. Again, I didn't play much of the campaign because campaign's not my thing for Call of Duty, but the few that I did play, I did find a lot of fun out of it, and being able to make your own loadouts and whatnot, that was fun. But you'll notice a through line for a lot of the Call of Duty games I'm going to mention on this list, which is that zombies is kind of the reason that I play these games, because of how influential Black Ops 2 Zombies was for me. You know, Transit was bad, Town was palatable, Farm was a little bit worse, Bus Depot was bad. Die Rise was a little bit better than Transit, depending on who you ask, but still wasn't great. And then Mob of the Dead. Oh, let me tell you, Mob of the Dead. I'm stepping away from my computer so you can see how dramatic I'm being. Mob of the Dead. I was considering getting a tattoo of Mob of the Dead because that is just like the best map in my personal opinion. And I think a lot of the other maps for future games were built off of the hindsight of Black Ops 2's Mob of the Dead. And there's a reason why it's usually in the top 3 or top 5 for most people. Either way, Black Ops 2's Zombies kept me hooked. And again, they're only second to Black Ops 3 Zombies because of just the sheer amount of variety that you can get in that game. But Black Ops 2 came out the fucking gate swinging, and I'm so incredibly happy that this is the game that I started my Call of Duty journey with. We're going to be on a bit of a Call of Duty kick for a little bit. We have Call of Duty Ghosts, which is definitively a much worse game. Allegedly, the campaign was, really good, and then they left us on a bad cliffhanger or something, if I'm not mistaken. The multiplayer, I didn't play public matches because I didn't like them very much. The game felt just a little bit worse. It felt like a more gray and beige version of Black Ops 2 in terms of the color palette of the maps, the color palette of the camos. The gold camo in that game, I don't know why I'm talking about Mastery camos so much, but the gold camo in that game felt pathetic. It was piss baby gold camo, and I didn't like it. Generally, I think everything that Ghosts did, almost every other game around it did better, within its era at least, because there's definitively some Call of Duty games now that are definitely worse than Call of Duty Ghosts, and that's just a fact. But Call of Duty Ghosts, like, it has a special place in my heart because it was a lot of fun, and they took a lot of really creative and fun approaches. Like what was that? That was the map where somebody could play as Michael Myers. That was really cool. There was the Mayan map where you could play as the alien or the Predator. That was super cool. And like, yeah, I'm sure in a regular match of multiplayer that's gimmicky as shit, but when you're in a custom game, it's like, that is so much fun. It's just breaking the mold on what Call of Duty custom games were for us at the time, and it was so incredibly fresh and unique. And honestly, I think if I had that friend group come back together and play that game, we'd probably still have a certain level of appreciation for what they did with those crazy mechanics. And then you get on to Extinction, which again is objectively worse than almost any other Zombies experience. But even for it being a completely new experience with specific objectives you have to do in order to be able to proceed, the fact that playing a round of Extinction essentially means you are doing quote-unquote the Easter egg for the map, the way that you had to pick up stuff off the ground, like your explosives and your tacticals and your lethal grenades and all of that, it felt like a little bit of a Zombies roguelike in a sense, because you could get a starting loadout, you could use currency that you collect in order to get different things to make your starting loadout different or better. You could use those things to buy different resources that you could use to make your experience different or better while playing. And so I think, with the hindsight of what Extinction did in Call of Duty Ghosts, I think they could take that and they could make it a lot better. Because Extinction had a lot of really, really good things that it did, and it had a lot of really good potential for what it could be. I just think it was a little bit half-baked and maybe a little bit too drastic of a change coming from what happened after Black Ops 2 and other Call of Duty games before it. But I also don't have a lot of like community consensus on that, so I can't say for certain. That's just my personal opinion. Call of Duty Advanced Warfare is a bit of an interesting case because this game is probably a little bit better than Ghosts in terms of its gameplay loop, but its alternate game mode of zombies, in my opinion, is generally teetering on worse than Ghosts Extinction, although they did have a couple of better maps. And I think Advanced Warfare only got what it got at the time in terms of its ratings because of its comparison to Ghosts and games before it. Because if you compare the other Call of Duty games that came out after it with the advanced movement specifically, Advanced Warfare is just pee-pee. Its movement is very clunky, it's very rigid in not a good way, it's not smooth, not flowy, it doesn't really feel good to play with, it doesn't feel good to play into. There's a lot of movement-based games where at least the movement feels like there is something that the enemy player can do about it in like a fun and engaging way, and not, I am immediately redirecting my velocity in a different direction just because I pressed a button and there's like no read, no tell to that. It's kind of lame. It also is maybe the worst Call of Duty game in like a meta sense because of the way it decided to implement microtransactions in the form of those stupid supply drops or supply crates, because now Call of Duty is just only doing that. I shouldn't say they're only doing that. They have gameplay around their gameplay, but like every game is doing that and abusing the fuck out of it because of what Advanced Warfare did. Sure, the supply drop mechanic taught Activision and what are the other ones? Infinity Ward, and who's the third? And Treyarch. Anywho, it taught all of those guys that they can make an asinine amount of money off of these games. But it does come at the cost of player experience, because now, especially in Advanced Warfare's case, you just have so many like completely brutally honest pay-to-win variants of different weapons that were already pretty overpowered to begin with. And like, that's no fucking fun to fight against. There was just so much fucking bloat in the game that just came from them wanting to release stuff for the sake of releasing stuff, for the sake of people buying loot boxes to keep giving them more money, and that's fucking lame. That's just horrible. But that said, it did shape a lot of the way that I perceived Call of Duty games for a while, because I was one of those people that just, since Black Ops 2, had just kind of been purchasing the Call of Duty games on loop because I felt like they were actually doing something, whereas now they kind of just feel like the same game that happened to look a little bit different, right? So at least back then I had a very good reason for doing that, but Advanced Warfare gets a big fat fucking thumbs down from me because it has made Activision demonic as hell. But then let me switch gears back again. Black Ops 3 is hands down, I think, the best Call of Duty game that we have had the pleasure of experiencing since 2010, probably, well, since 20. In my personal opinion, from Black Ops 2 upward to where we're at now, I think Black Ops 3 is probably the pinnacle of a Call of Duty game that we've ever gotten, because kind of just because of the exact inverse things of a bunch of other things that I've been saying. Though I think the one thing that Black Ops 3 like truly objectively falls short in is its campaign, because it's just bad, and I think it's really hard. It was probably really hard for them to write like a convincing and compelling campaign set in the universe that Black Ops 3 was set in. That's not me giving them a pass, that's just my speculation and assessment on the situation. And of course, I can't talk about Black Ops 3 without talking about its kind of egregious use of microtransactions as well, because you have an absurd amount of weapons, some of which are genuinely really powerful, and that's lame as fuck to deal with, but they at least gave you opportunities to get those weapons that didn't require you that you just fucking gamble forever, right? And they had a lot more fun variety in their cosmetics and in the things that they had, at least in my personal opinion. Some of it was gaudy, some of it was kind of cringe and lame and annoying, but a lot of it to me felt really well done, or at least it felt like it was in the spirit of being an arcade shooter in a sense, right? And I never personally felt like the random crazy cosmetics in Black Ops 3 were really getting in the way of anything, maybe with the exception of like how ridiculous some of the camos could get, right? Like, I don't know, it's a weird thing for me to point out. The camos were a little bit abrasive at times, but also, a lot of them were really cool. I liked them a lot. Black Ops 3 also had really good mastery challenges and mastery camos. I think their diamond is worse than Black Ops 2's, but the fact that they have dark matter makes it just like top 3 very, very close and in contention with being the best of any games mastery camos, especially because by comparison to all the other games like Black Ops 6 and the trilogy of the 2020s Modern Warfare games that just make you go through like 30 fucking weapons, 70 levels, 15 to 16 to 20 camos. It's fucking insane. And I know it's because in those games are trying to justify their really high cost of $70, right? I think Black Ops 3 at least was a little bit more tame in that capacity. And again, the Dark Matter is just really fucking cool. And then, I mean, I could be here for another hour talking just about the zombies. I think Black Ops 3 Zombies base game doesn't have a single bad map. The worst Black Ops 3 map is, I still think, maybe not better from a gameplay perspective than every other Zombies map that's come out, but it is certainly like a more well-designed map that just has some unfun mechanics, but they still have probably the best run of base game Zombies maps in any Call of Duty game, period. And of course, they brought back Dead Ops Arcade, which is really cool. They brought some weird free roaming thing to help you test the mobility for the game. A lot of the maps that they released were taking advantage of that mobility, and they felt really cool, especially Redwood, I think. The fact that you can just run on like trees and stuff like that was really cool. This game is insane. And then it got ported to PC, and they got custom maps, which we hadn't seen since World at War Zombies, which I'll get to, and that just, the fucking game exploded. It's a shame that they have been going through their fits of like cheaters and people just straight up, you know, DDoSing people off of the service, you know? But when the game came to PC, it was like nearly definitively the best version of Call of Duty we had maybe ever gotten. And it's a shame that not many people are actually playing it because Activision doesn't have a reason to keep up with the servers in that game when they can just keep pumping out a slop Call of Duty game every single year and still get millions of people to buy it because they keep buying it because they... I don't know, they just keep buying the franchise because they keep buying the franchise, but they don't have like a, I don't know. I have thoughts on modern Call of Duty, but that's not for this video. Okay, that was a very long run of Call of Duty games. So let me shift gears a little bit here and bring you to one of the games that I had such good experiences with. And if I told anybody that I had such good experiences with this game, I feel like a lot of them would kind of chuckle and laugh at me a little bit because the game is objectively pretty fucking bad from an optimization standpoint. This is Ark Survival Evolved. I have put so many fucking hours into this game. I really wish I just unplugged my Xbox. I had to use it so that I could find more games for this video. I wish I could go back and see how many hours I put into that game because this group of people that I played with, it was a minimum of like 6 of us on an Ark server at any particular time. And it was just so much fun. It's kind of like the closest thing that I've ever experienced to like having to partake in like an MMO game. Like the amount of grinding that you have to do, and you're grinding for multiple hours to get all this XP and all these resources necessary to get like a piece of armor that'll make you stronger, or taking on this raid dungeon boss or whatever. Ark doesn't do, honestly, a lot of that, but it gave me those same kinds of experiences where I was so comfortable just coming home from school and just jamming that game for like 6 hours and just grinding the shit out of it. Getting resources, taming animals, breeding animals, you know, leveling up the animals, going and taking on caves and dungeons to get artifacts, going and building up a really nice base, and then getting kind of to the point where you're like, okay, it's almost like you're taking greater and greater steps until you eventually get to the point of taking on like the boss of the map, where you start off really, really weak and frail, and you're susceptible to dying to everything, and then you get a little bit stronger, and then you can kind of like, you can get yourself over the hump of like the first power spike, and then you're stuck there for a little bit, and then you get over that hump and get into the next power spike, and then eventually those slopes become easier to overcome, even if the slopes themselves are higher. And it was just such a satisfying gameplay loop that was only ruined by, I guess, my friend group's insistence on playing PvP servers, and the fact that it did get to a point of feeling a little bit like a job, in a sense, where it was like, I need to get on and I need to go and do this, otherwise I'm gonna get yelled at. And like, it's a fucking video game, I really shouldn't have cared that much, but there were times where it just felt like a fucking chore to do. And that's kind of the nature of games like this, and sometimes it felt really good. It's just that general having to grind to do things, I really had to be in a mood to want to do that. And if I didn't want to do that, it just felt like the most fucking annoying thing to have to do. So this game brought me tons of hours of enjoyable moments, but the game was poorly optimized, And then I think they probably just rushed Arc 2. I spent more time installing Arc 2 when it came out than I did playing the game. I spent maybe an hour installing the game, maybe an hour and a half, got on the game, tried to join a server, and it was the objectively most unoptimized piece of shit game I've ever fucking played. I was in that server for like 4 minutes. I stood there trying not to die to a dinosaur. My friend came in with a bird and picked me up and took me to the base, and I was like, this is fucking dog shit. I don't know how you guys are playing this. And then I immediately uninstalled and refunded the game. Like, I am so sad at the I wouldn't call it a fall from grace because it was never in grace to begin with, but it had so much potential, and I think it just kind of got fucked up by Wildcard for a myriad of reasons that I couldn't even begin to come up with because I don't know. Now, if I wanted a game that didn't force me to sink hundreds of hours of my life into it just to so much as get to a point of being able to fight the map itself, I was playing shooters. I obviously previously mentioned a lot of Call of Duty games, but 2016, you know what I'm gonna say, Overwatch came into the house and it was maybe one of the best gaming experiences that I had from a novel perspective. The heroes were great. I didn't pay attention to the meta, so I didn't care. I had so many friends who were playing this game. We were playing in so many stacks and experimenting and testing out different combos. We were testing out Beyblade with Ana's Nano Boost and Reaper's Death Blossom. We were testing out fucking Zenyatta discording a target and Tracer going in and just pegging them immediately. I'm gonna get demonetized for saying that. That was maybe some of the most unbridled joy that I've had from gaming since I was a teenager up until now. Just from a purely fun perspective. There's a lot of things that I can look at and go, this is objectively great. I'm having a really good time. But there's nothing that's really given me quite the unbridled joy as being able to play Overwatch right before Brig came out. Okay, any of my Overwatch nerds will understand this. Right before Brig came out, I was having such a good time, and then Brig came out and I wanted to shoot myself. This game's great. This game is awesome, and I'm really sad at what happened to it, and I'm glad to see that it's on the up and up, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit more because I do have its sequel upcoming in the PC section, but we're also 30 minutes into this video, and I am like 7 games in, and I have like 5 times that list, so I need to get moving. Brawlhalla was my only really hard definitive experience with a fighting game other than Super Smash Bros., which is to say, I think you can see the type that I'm into these more party game type fighting games. Brawlhalla is cool because of the level of like mobility that you're allowed to have in every single character. It's cool because of your ability to like pick up a weapon and juggle people and throw it at people, which was my main gimmick, go figure. The amount of characters that are in the game are really, really cool. The fact that 2 characters wielding the exact same set of weapons don't play the game the same is really cool. I liked the other throwable mechanics that you could use, like throwing spike balls and bombs at people. If you get a group of like 6 people playing this game on one of those big ass maps, it is maybe some of the most chaotic fun that you can have in a party style fighting game ever. And a lot of it is like, personally to me, never felt as frustrating as having to deal with the party nonsense chaos of Super Smash Bros. I don't know why, it just didn't, but like that game felt really good to get good at, and it's just like, the mechanics just feel really great. They also did a lot of crossovers with a bunch of different IPs, which doesn't change the way any characters play, which is cool. It just means that you have a funny little skin if you want to turn whatever the character is that you're playing into like John Cena or something. Like, it's very funny. They also celebrated their 30 years of Rayman very recently, and Rayman is my main, so maybe that's kind of the big reason I put this on the list, is because it sparked to my brain. But Brawlhalla is just awesome, and it doesn't even really require that the game consistently get updates to be relevant and fun for people, and yet it still does. So like, the game is free, and it only costs $30, I think, to get every single character now and every character in the future. So like, if you're a fan of party fighting games, go get Brawlhalla right now. Yes, you, go do it right now. People are talking all about their Elden Rings and their Sekiros and their Bloodborns and their Night Rains and their Shadow of the Erdtree. Is that what the DLC is called? No. I only care about Dark Souls 3, really. That's not true. I played like 40 hours of Elden Ring, but Dark Souls 3 is really my big thing. I started playing that game probably like 6 months to a year after it came out, and you know, Dark Souls 3 was like in that perfect intermediary period between how sluggish and pathetic you felt sometimes in the older Dark Souls games, and just how fluid and how much quality of life updates they've given to your character in Elden Ring, and by extension Night Rain. Like, the fact that you can walk around with your Estus is great, and people who played the original games probably got to Dark Souls 3 and were like, holy shit, I can actually move while taking a drink of my sippy cup, that's awesome. So like, Dark Souls 3 to me felt like that game that, like, it didn't give you so many quality of life changes that it just like made you weak and pathetic. But it gave you just enough that it made the gameplay experience not awful. And sure, there's a couple of awful things about Dark Souls, like some of the areas are pretty brutal, and there's some enemies in the game that I don't like fighting and some enemies that I don't like looking at. But like Dark Souls 3, I played that game, and on my one singular character, I think got all the way up to New Game Plus 4, and then we'll occasionally get back on the game and play like half of it when I'm really in a fit of playing the game. But like, I am glad that if I was to start playing a Souls game, that I started with Dark Souls 3, because of the intermediary quality that I talked about. If I started Dark Souls with the earlier games, I'd be like, this feels like shit. I'm not playing this. Now that said, I'd probably have a better payoff if I started with the earlier games, managed to toughen through them, and then got to Dark Souls 3 and was like, oh hell yeah, this is sick. But Dark Souls 3 just felt like the perfect refinement of like the Souls-specific series, because Elden Ring feels like its own different thing compared to Souls, compared to Sekiro, compared to Bloodborne, compared to games that are trying to kind of emulate that style, right? So Dark Souls 3 was really formative for me, and honestly, if my friends weren't so obsessed with Elden Ring and Night Rain, I'd probably be on a Dark Souls 3 kick more often, and I'd be playing the game more. For Honor, I got something to say to you. You have such cool gameplay mechanics. You had such cool character mechanics. My favorite was Shaman, if anybody was asking, and nobody was asking. Shaman's great. For Honor had so many good potential things that they could have done, and I really hate that it just got to a point of not feeling that good anymore. It felt like there was arbitrary changes being made to characters who didn't need it. Characters kept getting reworked and were either only getting, honestly, a lot of them were either staying exactly the same in terms of power level, or they were just getting worse, which didn't feel great for the people who were playing them. A lot of the characters don't feel fun to fight against. A lot of the active feats don't feel fun to fight against. A lot of the new characters are allegedly bloated as shit and not fun to fight against. For Honor had so much potential because it has probably the most unique combat system of any fighting game ever, which is cool, and it really, really stood out to me and made me like it. I do genuinely like the variety of the characters and what they can do, what they are capable of doing, and the different options that they have for dealing with other characters. I'm just so sad that the game went and turned into what it is now. And I'm also sad that I just honestly didn't even have a strong enough mental to play the game without just getting tilted out of my mind, because there was this problem where I sunk so many character levels into Shaman that I didn't know how to play other characters. And as a result, it meant I didn't know how to fight them. And if I tried learning how to play that character, it felt like the game was still putting me in lobbies with players who had 40 levels on their characters in terms of their actual skill level that I didn't have. So I never felt like I got the opportunity to actually learn and get good at the game system with those characters, because it was really hard for me to tough it out and just, literally just get good with the characters. So I don't know, maybe some of you, if any of you even get this far into the video and have something to say about For Honor, I would like to be won back into the game, because right now I'm not very convinced, and that sucks. The last game that I'll be devoting heavy extended time to in terms of the Xbox stuff is Titanfall 2. This game is goated as shit, and I'm so sad that it never got a third game. I'm so sad that this one and the first game had to, accidentally ended up in a state where it released alongside the next Titan in the first-person shooter gaming genre, because Titanfall 2 might be one of just the tightest feeling games ever. Game of its genre. It's like the tightest feeling game of its genre ever. The game felt mostly incredibly balanced. If you decided you didn't want to play with Titans, you could play without Titans. If you wanted to play with them, you could. If you wanted to play only Titans, you could do that. I got this game on PC because it went on a Giga sale a while ago, and it still all holds up. The movement is the biggest thing for Titanfall, where they both make the movement fun to use, rewarding to get good at, but not impossible to punish if you just know what you're doing, and that's awesome. I'm impressed that it's one of the few games that's actually managed to be able to achieve that kind of balance, and I really don't know what the game could be like if it had more players, and I don't know what the game could be like if it had more support to be able to make a third game to just refine that system even more. Because I think the people who made Titanfall 2 really had just like a perfect formula on their hands, and unfortunately they just can't do anything with it, I guess, and that's the most unfortunate part. The campaign was incredible, the alternate game modes were incredible, most of the weapons felt pretty good to use, a lot of the weapons had really fun modifications to change the way that you choose to play with them. The balancing was a little bit scuffed at times with some of the weapons, but for the most part I think you could get away with doing anything, because it's a combination of how good are you with your gun, how good are you at using the tools that you have, and how good are you at moving around. And so if you're good enough with a couple of those things, then you can just be better than a player who's using a better weapon, right? There's a lot of factors that can make you good at Titanfall. There's a lot of movement mechanics that you can get really, really good at, but it never feels like somebody could still be better in one capacity and still be able to counter you because they're just that much better in that capacity. There's options for everything, which is impressive given how much stuff there is that you can get good at. So like, this game is incredible. It's arguably one of just the best first-person shooters ever because of how tight its movement is and because of how tight its balancing is. And I think this game has a lot of potential, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere, which sucks a little bit. Now I'm going to try and rapid fire through a list of 12 or 13 games that were also notable, but in my opinion less important because they weren't nearly as influential on me. Screen peek. One of the most unique concepts for a game I've ever seen, where you are invisible and the only way that you can tell where your enemy is by literally looking on their screen, because all players' screens are displayed to you at the same time, which is really cool. Murder Miners was this just weird conglomeration of just like, you have some guns, you have some weird Minecraft textured zombies, you could build stuff with a build gun, you could destroy stuff with a destroy gun. It really did kind of feel like one of those garbage Xbox 360 games that was just kind of made, but like, its gameplay loop and the people that I played with, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it a lot. Same goes with Castle Miner Z. That's one of those games that I did actually go back and buy on Steam, because there's something so incredibly nostalgic about playing that game and being able to see the dragons flying overhead and hearing the music that plays when you get into new areas. And also, I'm a grown-ass adult. I'm nearly 25, and when I play that game and I'm getting hoarded by zombies, I'm still like, help me, please. I'm freaking out. I'm panicking. I'm like, I need to build better. I need to kill better. I need to do something to deal with these zombies. Like, this game is still a little bit tense at times, and it's awesome. Rivals of Aether, also an incredible party-style fighting game, entirely in pixel art, which is awesome, and it became infinitely better when they brought it to PC because of the workshop. You could have Mario pissing as a character. This game is fucking awesome, and its base game is cool. I don't know anything about its sequel because it's like 3D or something. I'll have to look more into that. But Rivals of Aether was incredibly influential for me growing up. Mortal Kombat X, another fighting game that I played, to a lesser degree, if I'm honest. I played who did I play? I played Jason and the green mage bastard. The guy, I don't remember his name. Green mage bastard. He had like a portal he could put you through. Ermac, that's his name. Mortal Kombat X in general was cool because it was like, here's 3 different ways that you can play each of these characters, and it does fundamentally change their entire moveset. That game was really cool. I'm bad at fighting games, but the characters I did play, their different forms that you could play with were really cool, because you could fight two people playing the same character but with different versions of it, and you'd have to change your strategy to fighting both of them and fight them entirely differently. This game is dope as shit. I didn't mention this in the original video because I hadn't thought about it, but Sonic Generations, I'm a Sonic head. I talked about Sonic for super fucking long in the original video. Sonic Generations was awesome, and again, at that time, may have been one of the best Sonic games that we had ever seen, because it didn't feel like it really relied on gimmicks very much. I personally like the gimmicks of the other games, but, you know, that whatever. BattleBlock Theater was also an incredibly enjoyable game. That's one of those games that I won't play for a really long time, and then I'll have some friends jump on, and we'll play the game, and we'll have some fun beating each other up and beating up other people and finding out unique and creative ways to beat the game. I don't really have a lot to say on it. It's just, it feels like one of those kind of hidden gems with how many fucking games the Xbox 360 had. Necropolis was the closest thing that my brain had ever experienced in a roguelike or a roguelite adjacent type game, where you could pick two different classes and you could choose to level your health, you could choose to level your movement speed, your dodge frames, you could pick up items that do different things, enemies have different weaknesses. Not every single match of Necropolis would function the same way, and honestly, I think that game would also be fucking banger if they just gave it a little bit more, I guess, because the game felt really, really bare bones, and even me as a child who didn't expect that much out of my games, even I was like, okay, this game could use a little bit more. Its color palette's a little bland, but it has so much potential, and I would love to see it get just a little bit more to make it a little bit more of a fleshed out game. Friday the 13th was the only game that I had ever played of this kind of style, this like DBD sort of style where you and a bunch of other people have to work together to achieve a common goal, that being escaping Camp Crystal Lake while Jason is hunting you. This also, like, Friday the 13th got me into not really the movie series per se, but it did get me really invested in like the reasons how Jason ended up looking different every single time in every movie, because you could play as those different versions in the game, which was really cool. This game was just really enjoyable to play. I am personally not the type of person who enjoys playing the monster in these sorts of 1v4 type games, probably because I'm bad. And so like the survivor experience in this game, especially if you're playing with like a semi-coordinated team, is a lot of fun. It's genuinely really enjoyable. And the last one, which I am sad to report is just like dead now, is Spellbreak. It was kind of one of the better ideas and concepts for a battle royale style game, and I really enjoyed it. I will say when we played it in its beta or whatever version it was in, there were definitely a couple of things that were like, this is so ridiculously unfun to fight into, and some of the combinations were just way too strong. But the game genuinely had so much potential. It's like the closest thing we could get to a non-licensed version of like an Avatar game that was a battle royale. But if I'm honest, I think the battle royale portion of it is also kind of what made it fail. So this game was super awesome, and again, I am so sad that it's fucking dead. Now we can move on to all of the PC games, which the beginning of this PC section is going to start kind of light, because I'm going to break up the PC section into the PC games that I played fairly early in my PC life that were not the ones mentioned in the original video, as well as all of the more recent ones that I've been playing. Some are going to be pretty obvious to you guys and some aren't. So we're going to start off this PC section with Terraria. The only reason that I put Terraria on here is because Terraria, to me, always had that Minecraft 2 week then burnout sort of problem, where we'd start a Terraria server and we're like, oh, look at this cool item I just found. I'm gonna go and build into this and become a type of character that utilizes yo-yos or whatever the fuck. And then you'd like fight a couple bosses, you'd get a little bit more powerful, and then you just stopped caring. I stopped caring, sorry, and I just be like, I don't know that I care that much anymore. Like, suddenly the gameplay loop with this game just doesn't intrigue me anymore. But the reason I put it on this list is just because I did actually play a full playthrough of Terraria, God, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and while I was a little behind because I was, a busy person and didn't always have the time to play Terraria when my friends were also playing it, when I did play, I had a lot of fun. And I got to actually enjoy and experience a lot of like the later game stuff. And when you get later game, you do have moments of being in like a power fantasy. And I did get to experience those, and I did genuinely have a really good time when I was doing it. It's also genuinely impressive just how much detail and how much creative freedom you can still have in a game that's completely missing the third dimension, which I find very fascinating. And the gameplay loop is really fun. The game has a lot of potential for someone like me. I don't know what the hell my problem is that otherwise prevents me from playing it to the point of finishing a full run. Then we'll go with a tried and true classic of Team Fortress 2, which by the time I started playing this game, it basically had received its final major update, which is funny that I say that because obviously there's like that Man vs. Machine update that'll be coming around soon. Jungle Inferno 2017 was around the time that I started playing the game, like, more often, I guess. And Team Fortress 2 is one of those games that I have fun playing in like hour to 2 hour long stints, but I'll gladly watch like 6 hours of combined Team Fortress 2 content over the course of a day from people who know a lot more than me and who are substantially better than me. if you want me to name drop a couple people, I have Salty Fish, Uncle Dane, Great Blue, what's his name, Wheezy TF2, the Man vs. Machine guy. Those are really fun to me. I really enjoy those kinds of videos because, you know, I'm not super focused on the gameplay per se. I am focused on some of the more analytical things, some of the more experimental, some of the more hypothetical things that Team Fortress 2 has to offer, but I do genuinely find it fascinating that Valve was able to concoct a game like this that a lot of people say that, like, if you're a content creator in the TF2 space, you have only, like, depending on how long you've been in the space, the most that you will have ever reached in terms of your content limit is like 20%. Like, and that's me being really generous. Like, most players who are content creators in the Team Fortress 2 space who have somewhat of a voice on the platform, there is so much content that they have done, and yet the list of content they could do is probably nearing on being larger than the content that they've already currently made because of just how do I explain it? How small the game is, but how impactful everything is. Like, Great Blue's videos to me are like a perfect encapsulation of, like, you have not even began to scratch the surface of how complex and cool this game is, despite it being 15 years old. Because he'll do random shit like, you know, Halloween events have been around in Team Fortress 2 for fucking ages, and I don't think he invented this, but he was the person who brought it to my attention of, like, you know what you could do? You could drink the Criticola or otherwise give yourself a mini crit boost, and you can make those spells really powerful. Like, that's insane to me. Team Fortress 2 otherwise doesn't let you headshot enemies with the exception of 2 weapons, and he's like, well, what if they could? You know, like, I think it's a lot of the hypothetical stuff to me that especially opens the content gate for Team Fortress 2, because it's like, this game is really tightly knit in its presentation and in the things you can currently do, which already gives you a vast plethora of shit you can do in the game, and is the reason why a lot of the content that can be explored has yet to be explored. And then you get into, like, the hypothetical and the theoretical, and it's like, oh my god. Imagine how much different of a game this game could have been if enemies could headshot, or if weapons didn't have downsides, or there's, like, entire servers dedicated to the idea of what if every weapon was in its most powerful state from a balancing perspective. Like, there's so much to this game, and it makes me really impressed with Valve's ability to create shit like this. They created such an incredible game in terms of its depth, and unfortunately nobody cares about it anymore, presumably because it's an old game, which sucks because Team Fortress 2 is still getting a lot more traction than almost every one of their other titles, maybe barring Deadlock, but I'm not in that space, so I can't say anything. Team Fortress 2 is fucking incredible is what I'm trying to get at. Now, Call of Duty World at War is where I'm going to come back on my little COD stint. It's only going to be one game, which is great, but World at War was my first foray into playing custom maps, which was really cool. Obviously, like I mentioned previously, Black Ops 3 did it a lot better because of the hindsight of World at War, and just because of the fact that they're like, the games are like 10 years apart, not 10 years apart, 7 years apart, I think, whatever. Like, there's a lot that Black Ops 3 learned from World at War, in my personal opinion, but World at War is the one that started it, and I do have a weird amount of nostalgia for playing the multiplayer for World at War, despite the fact that by the time I would have started playing the game on the Xbox 360, the Xbox One, like, that game would have been 5 or 6 years old at that point, and I have no clue how the content cycle for Call of Duty was around that time. But, like, there were still very active servers that I would join when playing World at War, so I don't know if there's a secret underground bunker of people who are still playing the game a bunch, or if the content loop for Call of Duty was just a lot healthier back then, where people were still playing that game because they still had a reason to, because, you know, Activision or Blizzard, not Blizzard, sorry, Activision or Treyarch or whomever wasn't just, like, shitting out the next slop game to just attract tens of millions of players. Like, maybe that's the reason why that was the case. I don't know. What I do know is that World of War was incredible, and I mean, I don't put many hours into the game anymore, but, like, when I was playing the game in, like, you know, in, like, the late 2010s, right before COVID happened, like, I still was banging out hours in that game. Like, I think I have 350, 360 hours in the game, so, like, I was not fucking around when I was playing that game very consistently. And now we're gonna get into me being part of a second really cringy fandom, because Five Nights at Freddy's has always been, like, a really fascinating series for me. I've still stuck onto this idea from day one that the interesting thing about Five Nights at Freddy's is that they basically give you no options to deal with anything. In other horror games, you can like run away or shoot the enemy or something, and in FNAF, you just sit there and you just stare at what's happening. And granted, that only applies to the first 4, 5, 6 games or whatever, but like, that's the content loop. You're like, well, I'm stuck here. If something's coming over to me and I don't have like door power to do anything about it, I'm just shit out of luck, right? And that was like a genuinely compelling argument for the game. Not necessarily a compelling reason that made me want to get it, but it was still pretty compelling in the first place. And, you know, I think the fact that it was like silly animatronic characters made it more palatable because I'm an easily frightened little bitch sometimes, right? But like, I think because of the cultural impact that Five Nights at Freddy's had on the horror landscape, and especially on the YouTube landscape, has kind of just kept me constantly sort of semi-paying attention to what's happening with it. And luckily not to the point of like listening to what anybody has to say on the opinions of how the games are, because I don't play them, so I don't care how they're made or what their gameplay loop is like or anything. But like, it's just fun to kind of keep up with the series and just see what's going on. And it has genuinely led to me finding some content creators that I really enjoy watching. I would not have found if it wasn't for the Five Nights at Freddy's landscape and keeping up with it just enough to see people push the game to its limits. So Five Nights at Freddy's, you're gonna get a stamp in my metaphorical book because I'm not printing an actual real book. Resident Evil Village is my second only experience with a Resident Evil game, with my first being Resident Evil 4 on the Nintendo Wii, so it feels like I'm in a pretty weird position right now. Resident Evil Village obviously got put on my radar because of Lady Dimitrescu and giant bazonk, but like, that's not even the reason that I play the game. I just find so much fascination in its gameplay loop and the fact that a lot of people do rightfully say that this is more of an action-adventure game than it is a horror game. But like, the landscape of it is really cool. The game itself looks incredible. I didn't have any pretense as to why Ethan just can pour some goop on his hand and then suddenly his hand is fully healed, so I just didn't really care about that very much. I just thought it was kind of silly. And I think some of what Resident Evil Village does is it takes the characters and it literally blows them up to proportions that make them kind of scary, but it also blows them up to proportions that makes it a little comedic in a sense. Like, Lady Dimitrescu turning into like that giant demented dragon or whatever is pretty scary, but it is also hilarious that there's like a 9-foot woman just walking around with a very long cigarette in her mouth, right? Like, that feels very cartoonish to me. Like, if it doesn't perfectly strike the balance between horror and like something being kind of silly and goofy, right? Like, I wouldn't say that at all, especially because I haven't played the other games. But like, you know, like I was talking about earlier with Black Ops 2 being like a more arcadey feeling Call of Duty game, Resident Evil in certain contexts feels a little bit cartoonish to me, where things are blown up to proportions that make them look funny, but at times they are legitimately kind of scary, especially because you're experiencing them right in the first person instead of in the third person, so you can't corner peek and do little things like that. So this game is awesome, and I don't know what they're gonna do next, but I might play it if it functions even kind of similarly to Resident Evil 7 or this one. Garry's Mod is a game that I'm only really putting on this list because it also feels like the ultimate custom game browser sort of game. Like, there'd be hours on end where I would just load into, like, I just downloaded like an excessive quantity of random workshop items and then would just go into SL Sandbox or whatever the code name is for the map. And then I would just be like, all right, I'm gonna spawn in 1,000 monsters and then see how this weapon can dispatch them, right? It's not one of those games that I could really see myself playing now because there's just too many more well put together games that are like, this is the intended way we want you to play the game. Like, I enjoy sandbox games. I think Garry's Mod's flavor of sandbox just doesn't appeal to me anymore, but it did really do a lot for me when I was younger, and especially a lot of the custom game, like Death Run, and a lot of, like, you know, what Vanoss Gaming and his whole group of people was doing in, like, the mid-2010s on that game did genuinely have an impact on me. So, again, Garry's Mod is not one of those games I would play now, but it did do a lot for me when I was younger, and I really appreciate it because of that. Portal 2 is also one of those games that I played a lot when I was younger and then didn't play much of any longer after that. Although in Portal 2's defense, it is because it is, you know, a slightly more linear game, but it is also one of those games where, like, if you haven't played it in a while and you have a friend who wants to play it, you could just both get on the game and just start a new save, and then, you know, within a couple of days you could have it entirely finished and you're like, that was fun. Now I remember why this game is good. I'm happy that I got my fill out of this game. Time to go do whatever I was doing previously. And that's genuinely very compelling. It has very genuinely good gameplay mechanics, you know, with it utilizing portals. The way that the different test chambers were set up are very nice. I thought it was pretty funny the way that they chose to handle the multiplayer, where they were like, here's 2 silly little robots. I don't know how they have anything to do with the story because I didn't fully play it, which might be sacrilege to some people. Like, the game is just fun. You know, if it's not fun, why bother? Then we have Sims 4. Sims 4, I talked about Sims a little bit in my previous video, but Sims 4 was my genuine foray into actually playing the game. And you know, for a while I didn't think I get it. And then I played the game and I was like, oh, I do actually kind of get it. Like, there is something kind of fun about just being able to like build a character and having a personality tied to him, and being able to have personalities tied to the roommates or the wife or whoever that person has, putting them in a household and just seeing what they do. It is a little annoying that, like, you are a sim, why are you not smart enough to just go use the bathroom? But also, if they were smart enough to do that, then like there would be no point in your existence, and thus the game wouldn't exist. So I guess I really can't complain all that much. Sims 4 is just really enjoyable, and if I'm not mistaken, I think they made the whole game free at some point, and some people would argue that like the fact that Sims 4 is just pushing so much DLC is fucking ridiculous, and I would have to agree. But when I did get my chances to play Sims 4, I log on, I check on my Sims and I see how they're doing. I make them go to work. They make money. I make their house better. They get happy. It's a fun gameplay loop, and it's pretty, I wouldn't say low maintenance, but it's not particularly intense. Like, it does suck a little bit when your sim is really bad at cooking and they walk into the kitchen and they start frying up an egg or something and then they just catch themselves on fire. Like, that's a little unfortunate, but especially compared to almost every other game on this list that I've talked about, The Sims 4 is just really chill and laid back. And there is, like, you know, there is a genuine demographic for that, and there's genuine times in my life where I would rather do nothing else than sit down and just micromanage some humans on the way that they choose to live. And I think that's fun. I'm gonna put Fortnite in on this list because, you know, you won't hear a lot of people talk about this because of how fucking massive the game is blown up. But I played a lot of Fortnite Save the World. That was just like its little campaign story mode. And honestly, it was very half-baked by comparison to the Battle Royale mode, which makes sense because with it being the only Battle Royale game to contest PUBG and being very colorful and very open to players as a direct result of that and feeling like it was more well put together, it's no wonder that the story mode ended up just getting shafted and they didn't do anything with it. But when I did play it, I did genuinely have a lot of fun because it very much is a very, very, very different gameplay experience than what you'll get in the Battle Royale mode. And the other reason I'm putting it on this list is because I genuinely feel like them adding a no-build mode brought a lot of players back to the game and brought a lot of new players to the game. It's definitely created its own issues that I will not really speak on because honestly, I don't remember what they were specifically, but, you know, Battle Royale games are just frustrating in general when people are really good at them and you're not. And no build just had its own forms of those issues, but a lot of what you can do in the no build mode, because you don't have to worry about somebody just like infinitely repairing shit in front of your face, makes you feel like you actually get the capacity to play the game sometimes. But as a direct result of that, it also means that if somebody gets a really, really strong weapon, you walk up to them thinking you can beat them by outgunning them, and then you find out that they just had like the strongest close range weapon in the game, and it's also a mythic, so it's extra overpowered, and that's not fun. So I don't really play the game anymore, but every once in a while when I do, like, it is a genuinely fun experience. I don't have the time to put into being a god gamer at that game. And Battle Royales, you know, if you're bad at them, you spend more time waiting for a game to start and, you know, loading into a match than you do actually playing the game. So that's not really my cup of tea, especially not by myself, to be very honest with you. 2020 was a weird time, and it got a lot of my current now best friends into gaming more than they were not really much of gamers, and then COVID happened and they didn't really have a choice. Gaming was kind of the best outlet that they had. And Smite was that game that a lot of my friends used as vices, in a sense, because it encouraged a lot of teamwork. It genuinely felt rewarding to get to understand characters' kits and how to play them into other characters and how items worked. And, you know, like, I like being a nerd for these sorts of things. I like being a nerd and keeping up with patch notes and seeing what's going on in the game. And Smite really did that for me. I think if I check my Steam right now, I probably have, teetering on 2,000 hours on Smite. Yeah, 1,900 hours. And it wasn't all for nothing. Like, I did enjoy most of the time that I spent playing it, but I can also understand that, especially as I got older and as I gained new responsibilities and as I had, something like this channel to keep up with, or I guess rather my main channel, and now this one by extension, I couldn't afford to do anything more than like 2 games of Smite if I wanted to play Conquest, like their main mode, because every game takes 25 minutes to an hour. I just don't have that kind of time to do that. And it especially feels like a real kick in the ding dong when you spend 30 minutes in a game of Smite and then you just lose. Like, that's just no fun. But Smite really did a lot for collectively rallying a lot of my friends at the time to come together and try to get good at playing this game. And even 2,000 hours to people who've played Smite for literal years is nothing. Like, there's 2 content creators that I watch. These players put in a crazy amount of hours into the game. And when I was talking with them, I was like, I just feel like I don't know what I'm doing, and I've played for 2,000 hours, and they were like, well, yeah, but it's because you've only played for 2,000 hours, and I'm like, what? Is this how MOBAs are? Is this just how, is this how this functions? Like, if that's the case, that's fucked up. If anything, I would prefer to spend a couple hundred hours really learning and understanding something, and then spending, a couple thousand after the fact getting better at those things, as opposed to being like, well, you've only put 2,000 hours into the game, you don't even know what you're doing yet. I'm like, that is asinine. And like, good for the people who do that. It's great. I can't do that. And the last one that I'll put on the PC list is Sea of Thieves, because I genuinely never thought I would be a fan of Sea of Thieves. I watched a content creator who used to be a Minecraft content creator, Chimney Swift 11. He moved over to Sea of Thieves and was streaming the heck out of it on Twitch. And I enjoyed watching it so much. I enjoyed the personality of the guy so much playing the game, but I never thought I would ever really get into playing it. And then, what was it, the Sea Fort event? Whatever event that's actually called, like the event that added Sea Forts, or like the update that added the Sea Forts, I was like, okay, I can give them a shot, because Sea Forts seem like a low risk way to get some loot and to try and, just learn the ropes of the game a little bit. And then I was like, okay, playing the game by myself is boring as shit. It's just not very enjoyable for me personally. So then I had a couple of my buddies who also got Sea of Thieves, and then we started making a bunch of YouTube videos on the Nothing Is Anything channel, and that was such a great experience. And then cheaters became a really big problem, and we were like, we're not fucking playing this game, and so we stopped playing the game. Allegedly, they keep releasing updates that's like breaking the game, and so they have to keep rolling back the updates, which is not a good look for the game. And like, if they stopped doing that, if we just knew the game was consistent and in a playable state and we didn't have to worry about cheaters or whatever, I'm sure some of us would get back on the game. But there's also probably I think there's just things that are core built into the game that just aren't very fun to fight against. Like, we wouldn't go out and attack people very much. We would go and do big events, and then people would try and come kill us, and then we would kill them, and then the game would spawn them literally on the island right next to us. So before we can even fully fix everything that just happened and get more resources just in case somebody tries to attack us, they're immediately on us again. We had so many situations where, I am not exaggerating, 4 members of the server, 4 ships on the server, which is you can have 6 total ships on a server at once. So we were 1, and we had upwards of 3 or 4 ships that would be trying to tackle us at the same time. And a lot of these players are either solo queuing or are really bad at the game, because our team coordination allowed us to actually fight back against all of them. But that's not a fun experience. To be very honest, that is not a fun experience. It is not fun having to deal with 4 different people all at the same time, especially with the aforementioned issue of them just being like spawning at the island right next to us. That's bullshit. So I think because of things like that, we stopped playing the game. But if the game came back and was more consistent and didn't have these sorts of issues, you bet your ass I'd be back on this game, because I enjoy it so much with my friends. Okay, I have a small miscellaneous list of games that they don't really belong anywhere really, because they're kind of tied to different games back and forth. And so we'll go through this list really quickly, and then I'll go through my most recent PC games that I'm just in love with in some capacity, and then a couple of underrated gems, just because they're games that are influential to me in some capacity, but not necessarily enough to fully be in this video. They're just brought to your guys' attention so that way you can do something with that information, I suppose. So we'll start off the miscellaneous list with Baba Is You. This is a very strange, I would call it like a meta puzzle solving game, because it wasn't just as simple as find a way to open this door and get this key, the key of which you can use to unlock a chest that has treasure in it. What it was is you are this little pink, nope, he's not pink, he's white. I don't know why I said that. He's a white sheep. He's very silly. And it's basically like programmer code that is in the map that can be messed with. So Baba is the character you play as. Baba Is You is the name of the game, and the word Baba Is You is literally on the map in 3 movable blocks that you can use. So you take that and you extrapolate that to a lot of the other meta components of the map. You have like wall is stop. And if you remove the is statement from that, suddenly the wall is not stop and you can walk right through it. When I put it just like that, it's not the most intuitive thing in the world, but if you go look at the game, it's really cool. It's a game from like, God, I don't know, 6 years ago or something, and it's really one of the more creative puzzle solving games that I've ever seen. And I do love the way that they choose to force you to navigate the meta information on the map, and the fact that you are working within a finite, confined space most of the time, and Baba can't pull blocks, he can only push them, and he cannot retract them if he pulls them. You can only undo the push in a sense. So if you need to move an is statement from one line to a different line, you have to actually figure out pathing in order to get you to that point in order to make the other statement that you're trying to make true. And that isn't like that is a legitimate part of the difficulty spike when playing the game. So this game is dope as shit. Mario Odyssey, of course, has to be on this list because I was, in fact, one of those people who owned a Switch, and I still own a Switch, and I don't have Mario Odyssey anymore because the Switch that I got Odyssey on and the Switch I have now are not the same. But anywho, Mario Odyssey is obviously one of the most influential Mario games and probably one of the most influential Switch games that we've ever seen. So that game is incredible, and I shouldn't even have to explain to you why. I mean, entire YouTube channels are made off of current, existing Mario Odyssey content. Some channels were made off of Mario Odyssey content as a challenge game. This game is incredible. Like, that's just it. And then if you'll let my autism come out for a little bit that I can't confirm that I have, but I think I might have it, is the 3 Insomniac Spider-Man games. People had a lot of really strong feelings on the third one, especially Marvel Spider-Man 2. They had a lot of strong feelings on that game. Some people are like, well, this game is lame as hell because it doesn't really add much from the original 2 games, which to a certain degree I kind of understand. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you'd have people bitching and whining and complaining that it didn't win Game of the Year in 2024, which is like, you're coping so hard, like maybe the hardest cope I've ever seen on the internet ever. And this is coming from a person who, like I just mentioned, is like autistically obsessed with Spider-Man. Like I have a whole Spider-Man tattoo on my arm because I really just do appreciate this franchise. And I really love those games because to me, they are like the best feeling Spider-Man games in my opinion. But I'm under no delusion that they were going to be Game of the Year, especially not when contending with fucking Baldur's Gate, okay? Like, you guys are insane and you need to chill out. But these games were awesome. I love the storytelling. I love the movement, the combat, the mechanics, the characters, the voice acting. I really do love Peter's new face model. A lot of people were also bitching and complaining about that. To me, this isn't, how do I explain it? I never thought his original face model matched up with his voice very much, especially because of the Peter Parker that we have in the Insomniac universe. I just never thought his face matched his voice or his general temperament and demeanor. And that's like a really small thing that ultimately doesn't matter on the grand scheme of things. But the point is that I really enjoy these games. And honestly, if I had a better computer that could run Spider-Man 2, I'd get it on my computer, and I would use that as maybe the background footage for a lot of this, just like I did with the original fucking video. These games are tight as hell. And then lastly, I'm gonna go with the modern God of War games. 2018 and Ragnarok were fantastic. I didn't play them on particularly hard difficulties, and the game still kicked my ass, and I do get frustrated at stuff like the Valkyrie fights in the original game, and some of the like warlord type fights in Ragnarok. Like they hurt, they suck to fight against, I'm not gonna lie. But if you play that game for the storytelling and you get really good at the combat, the game is just really fun. But you can also metagame it if you want to be the God of War, to just absolutely fucking clown on everybody in that goddamn game. Like you can just mess people up in that game, but you don't really have to. if you're just good enough or patient enough, you can just play the game through its story, and then you can feel the emotional catharsis of when that story ends. Like, it's probably, in my opinion, it's one of my favorite story-driven games that I've ever played. If I'm specifically talking about games that have a story that they very obviously present to you, because there's games like Hollow Knight and Dark Souls that don't present a story really right in front of your face, and you kind of have to assume a lot of stuff or look up a lot of stuff to understand stuff on a deeper level. But in terms of games that present the story to you and expect you to play through it, and you watch all the cutscenes, it's great. Like, it's weird because it's not one of those games I would necessarily play again because it's such a massive game, and I'm one of those people who likes to go through and find as much as I can. I don't like to metagame things, but I am, and I'm not even a full completionist. I just like to, within a reasonable amount, explore everything and pick up everything, and to me, that's how I get my hours out of the game. So I don't know that I would necessarily play it again, but maybe if I was in a situation where, like, my partner wanted to watch a story game from me or whatever, and I don't know that she does, but if she ever wanted to, I think those games back to back sequentially is probably where I'd go for that, because they're just incredible. Alright, let me get into my list of games that are my most recent loves for one reason or another. Luckily, a lot of these games are going to be games that I've covered on my main channel from like a soundtrack perspective, in which I do try to genuinely give you a lot of reasons why I like those games, so I'll try to keep things kind of short here. Overwatch 2, I can't get away from the love that I had for Overwatch 1 when it came out. And especially the state that it's in right now, I think it's probably the most palatable that Overwatch 2 has been in a long time, if you ignore the community. All right, that's the big thing. The community for this game and Marvel Rivals, which I'll get to in a minute, are such bastards, but if you can move beyond that and just focus on the gameplay and just focus on getting better at the game and just taking advantage of how fun some of the character kits feel, it is still a really good time. Overwatch 2 started off really rocky, and I still played it because it felt close enough to Overwatch 1 that I didn't care. Overwatch 2, I think now is, in some ways, its own separate beast that I really do genuinely quite enjoy. Not as much as I enjoy other multiplayer games, by a long shot, to be honest with you. However, I do actually get itches to play Overwatch now. Like, I do actually get itches to play Overwatch 2. A couple of months ago, I unfortunately just never had those. And when those itches come, I am playing the game for multiple hours on end. I enjoy consuming content about the game. I'm kind of interested in watching the patch notes that are going on. And I've met some cool people through Overwatch, like CR2 Obstacle. I don't think he's going to get this far into this video if he's even going to see that it's out, but he will make another appearance on this channel. And if it wasn't for Overwatch 2, I wouldn't have met him. And he's a goated content creator, okay? That's just the bottom line. And Overwatch 2 is to thank for me finding him. So there's a lot that this game has done for me. There's a lot that this game has taken away from me. But I think right now, I am comfortable putting it in one of my most recent loves in this list, as opposed to just removing it from the list entirely. And then you, Marvel Rivals, you guys also have so much fucking potential. Because you're dealing with one of the most popular IPs ever. Because you have the comics, and you have the cinematics, you have movies, you have so many games on your respective characters. And I feel like Marvel Rivals is not properly living up to the expectations of any of that. Possibly because of the fact that it's a hero shooter, possibly because of the fact that it's a live service game, possibly because of the fact that because of those exact things, the player base from Overwatch moved over to that game, and the Overwatch player base has been salty as shit since, like, I don't know, 2018, 2019 Overwatch, and they're now just spewing all their hate to the Marvel Rivals players because they don't know how to touch grass and feel like the only way to communicate with people is through slurs. I don't get these fucking people, but this game genuinely has potential. And I will say that when it dropped, I mean, I think it has probably made me sink more of my time into it in a short time span than any other game that I have played except for Smite. Since the game has come out, and keeping in mind, I don't think I had played the game for 2-3 months probably. Like, I sunk 200 hours into this game. I sunk so much time into this game because my friends were playing it, and the Marvel IPs are so much fun, and the team-ups are fun, and it was a break from Overwatch, which genuinely felt really good to me. But right now, the proof is in the pudding with the fact that their player base is, I think, objectively less than Overwatch's. Rivals, you have to get your shit together, but you're still gonna go on this list because I think you have a lot of potential, and those 200 hours ain't for nothing. Another game that I've sunk an egregious amount of time to in the last couple of weeks is Warhammer 40k Darktide. If there was ever going to be a fucking Warhammer game on this list, you probably expected it was going to be Space Marines, because I think that is objectively the best Warhammer game that Warhammer fans have ever gotten from, like, electronic media. However, Darktide is a game that is in a really good state. It started off pretty bad. It started off as one of those games that only turbo nerd fans of the game would enjoy at all. And I don't mean that in like a mean way. Now it's to the point where I, a person who knows nothing about the lore of Warhammer and only just happened to have some friends who play the game, they managed to get me into the game. And now with all of the content changes and all of the updates that it's received and the new class that it has and the potential stuff that it's going to have in the near future, combine that with higher difficulty levels and more weapons and different ways to augment your weapons and more updated, less annoying way to augment your weapons, it makes everything feel smoother. And this game is fucking awesome. Like, this game is just so much fun. It genuinely feels like you were playing a Left 4 Dead game, except if the zombies that you were fighting off were cracked out of their goddamn minds. My friend once described this to me as not a horde shooter, but a horde cleaver. And I think the fact that you're cleaving through tons of enemies makes it feel just that much better. So if you're a fan of horde shooters, I would advise maybe watching some gameplay on this game. Or hell, if you're in our Discord, you can come ask us about it, because we have enough people who can tell you about the game, and maybe stream it if you want to come into a chat. I don't give a shit. This game is awesome. And if you're a fan of that type of game, I genuinely think this might be one that you would enjoy. And then my next list contains 6 games, all of which I've made videos on. So again, I've explained in those videos why I really enjoy them. So we'll try to go as quickly as I can. Ultra Kill is one of those games that has changed my life, genuinely. It is a cultural phenomenon in the realm of its genre type, like the boomer shooter type. There's games that are inspired off of it, which is funny because it is inspired off of Doom. Its soundtrack is incredible. It has many moments of not taking itself very seriously, which is great because the whole premise of it is pretty comical in a way, because it's already, it's literally a parody of Divine Comedy. This game is great. Voice acting is great. The main character for the main voice actor for Gabriel, whose name is Gianni, has like transcended the Ultra Kill space in some capacity. And it's done really good for the publishing company that helped to publish it. Hollow Knight is a game I just fucking finished, or I just finished a video on, so sorry. But it has just some of the best and most like well-written music I've ever heard in a game. Its combat is great. The Metroidvania aspects of it do genuinely make it a compelling option for people to play. There's a reason why hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of players were excited for Silksong, which is already out by the time I'm recording this. There's a reason why Silksong is so hype, because Hollow Knight, when it dropped, was incredibly influential for the Metroidvania category. And again, I came at the game from the perspective of the music of it all, and I genuinely think that the music is also very influential in the space, which is great for it. Risk of Rain 2, I think, is probably the only game that tops Hollow Knight in terms of how expertly written the music is, because again, that's what I hyperfixate on. But the gameplay loop is just so much fun. Most of the survivors have their genuine fun points. There's new survivors coming out soon. There's DLC being added for the game still, because I think they're actually listening to the feedback of content creators, which is incredible. And again, most importantly, like this music, maybe I'm just biased because I've actually been able to kind of peer into the eye of Chris Christodoulou, the composer for the game, but like, this music is crafted on a technical level that I never would even begin to think of. And in the realm of video game composers it truly is probably some of the most technically impressive that I've ever seen. Balatro was sweeping the fucking nation. I mean, you'd have like whole corporate accounts being like, sorry, I can't do my job right now, I'm playing Balatro, because it's just like, it's one of the easiest games to get into and see why it's fun. There's obviously scaling difficulty for those that really want to go for it, but baseline, this game is incredibly easy to get into. It's incredibly fun, very vibrant, very colorful, tons of crazy synergies, tons of impressive mods for the game. And Balatro has also changed people's lives. Like, there's content creators that I watch that I'm like, their lives have been fundamentally altered by what Balatro is, or by what Balatro has done for them. Again, it's also one of those games that I did a music analysis video specifically talking about, because it's also really well done, and the way that they chose to handle commissioning with the guy who made the music is just incredible, and understanding some of the meta details about it, like its sample rate being reduced, which made it easier to listen to. Go watch that video so you can look at the intricacies of that. But Balatro is truly, this shook up the entire gaming landscape, to the point where people who don't play poker, to people who don't play roguelikes, they probably heard about Balatro. They didn't have to play it, but they did hear about it, which is fucking insane for a game like this. Lethal Company is definitely the first of what some would classify, or I shouldn't say definitely, I'm sorry. Lethal Company feels like it was one of the first of those friend slop games, as people have started to token them as, that we had seen, or at least one of the first ones to really blow up in that capacity. I made a video talking about why it proves we need games with proximity chat, and you wouldn't believe it, every other friend slop game, again as their token, that has come out has been utilizing proximity chat because of the amount of comedic value that it brings, and also because of the amount of tension that it can bring if you try and call out for one of your friends and suddenly you can't hear them. Again, go watch that video so you can hear more of the finer details. But Lethal Company is still really good. Like, I don't find a lot of its gameplay loop to be gimmicky even after the updates that have come through. It's one of those games that I could still see myself playing long after, whereas something like, what the hell is that drug selling game again? I don't remember what it was called, but that drug selling game, like, I don't give a shit about that. None of my friends who claimed it was going to be really good have given a shit about the game. Repo, my friends are personally still a big fan of it, but I don't hear many people talking about it anymore. I'm glad that the devs are like making YouTube videos on like the process for making updates or whatever they're doing, but like Repo's not my cup of tea. So it's great to know that Lethal Company has still continued to be a bit of a power player in some capacity. Although I do feel a little bit bad knowing that like in the general gaming landscape of other quote unquote friend slop games, Lethal Company feels like the most boomer-ish of the lot of them. And it's very odd, but this game is still dope as shit no matter how you want to spin it. And the last one in my little run of things that I've done videos on is Deep Rock, which has probably the most unanimous hive mind community that I've ever seen, which I think is hilarious. And Deep Rock Galactic is also one of those games that I feel like there's so much you can do with the game because of the amount of overclocks that you can do and the amount of differing builds, and especially if they're going to continue to update and add new things. The way that they've handled ongoing content in the forms of battle passes is probably the healthiest of any game that I've ever seen, where not completing a battle pass just means that the stuff that's in that battle pass can show up in the randomized loot drops. So playing the game enough can still help you get that content, which is great. The music, again, as expected, is incredible. The people who wrote it were really, really good at what they did. The cave generation is cool. The weapon variety is cool. The bug variety is genuinely really cool. Like, I don't really think there's that many bugs in the game that I look at and I go, fuck you, this is a bullshit mechanic, and I don't like it. I hate it. I don't think there's really anything in Deep Rock that does that to me. I think the one thing that I find frustration with is only my own personal experience, which is that I have like 350 hours in the game. So sorry, 275. But all of them, almost all of that time is spent with friends, because when I play by myself, I am just absolute shit in the game. And it is no fun to play when I'm by myself because of how bad I am at it. But I don't think that's an indictment on the game. That's probably just me being bad. The last two I'll put on this list are in two entirely separate directions, but they've also just come up because of relevancy, I suppose. Persona 5 and Magic the Gathering. You can debate whether Magic the Gathering or Warhammer is the more nerdy of the two. I'm personally a bigger fan of Magic the Gathering's flavor of it. My friends have been trying to get me into this game for, I don't know, 2-3 years, and I've always been like, that game just seems too fucking complicated for me because the game is older than I am. My friends have been into the game and have been, playing it for nearly 15 years. And I was like, that is a lot for me to have to learn. And then Pokemon TCG Pocket came out and I realized that that game is too simple and I don't like how simple it is. And then one day when I was in a state where weed is legal, I got high as shit and played a random deck that my friend had made for me. Or well, he just made it. He didn't make it for me, he just made it. And I played it, zooted out of my mind, and it was such an enjoyable experience, like getting to learn about mechanics and getting to learn about the politicking of playing like a commander game with a couple of other people. The 1v1 format is perfectly fine and acceptable, and MTG Arena specifically is just like the most palatable way to get into the game because it's just so easy. You jump in, you can get it on your phone, you can get it on a Mac, you can get it on a laptop, you can get it on a computer, and you can just play the game and you can just learn. And especially if you're playing with other new people who are trying to learn the game, you don't feel like an annoying amount of power creep or anything. And because I was playing with kind of the guidance and help of my two friends who have been playing it for nearly 15 years, they were like, oh yeah, this is how this mechanic works. It may not be super obvious in the way the card lists it, but this is how the mechanic works. And I think that's very nice of them, and I very much appreciate that. Magic the Gathering, super fucking nerdy in like the best way possible, in my opinion. Persona 5, I think all Persona games are like contentious in a way, because everybody always says your opinion on what the best Persona game is starts when you pick up your first game for the first time. Persona 5 is my favorite. I can't speak to if it's the best because I haven't played any of the other ones, but I do have Persona 3 in my library. But it's just so much fun. Granted, the way that I've been playing it has been like the 100% completionist sort of way, but even while being backseated into knowing where I need to go and certain events that I need to take in order to progress the game properly and to kind of min-max my stats and whatever, that never really bothered me, honestly. There's a lot of balance between like the overworld when you are just a student in school and when you are one of the Phantom Thieves, when you are your persona in this game's case. And I can spend 3 fucking hours as one of the Phantom Thieves and then like, okay, here's 3 hours of me being a regular human. So spend 3 hours like in the real world doing real world things, hanging out with friends, trying to pass school, buying lunch, random bullshit like that, right? It feels very slice of life. And then you get into the combat, and the combat, I've never been much of an RPG person per se. Presumably it seems like a lot of RPG systems work similarly enough in that capacity where Persona 5 being palatable enough for me to understand it means that it'll be easier for me to understand better, or that it'll be easier for me to understand more RPG games in the future, and I really appreciate that. Lastly, we're gonna go through my list of underrated gems, and I have fucking 8 of them. We're just gonna get it going with Gunfire Reborn. Gunfire Reborn is one of those games, it's a roguelite, but it's roguelite in different tiers because you have a character that you start with that already has different abilities from the other characters in the game. Then you can level those characters permanently that make them stronger in some capacity at doing what their character is really good at and maybe tightening up some of their weaknesses. That's the first layer. Then you have goblets that you can pick up which will make your character's abilities and passives they trigger and elemental damage they do and bullet and all this random shit, it will make those things stronger. Then you have different weapons with different weapon gimmick mechanics that, you know, function differently and want you to do different things and are better on different classes as a result. And then you have the upgrades that can also make your weapons better, such as giving them infinite ammo for a short period of time after doing something, or allowing you to shoot for as long as you want, even when your clip hits 0, but every bullet after you fire, when your clip is 0, you take damage. So it's like layers on layers on layers that allow for just some absolutely asinine bullshit that you can achieve in the game, and it's so much fun. And it's especially fun when you're playing with a bunch of friends, because you could have one guy that is just never able to die because he's healing more than he can possibly ever take damage. You can have one person who is area striking from the back of the map with a sniper. You can have a person who's running around and picking off enemies with melee weapons while being super fast. Like, there is so much you can do in the game, with the only caveat to that being that you may have to play a couple of rounds in order to get to that state in the build where you just feel like a god at doing this one particular thing. And sometimes that doesn't happen. But at the very least, things synergize more than you think they do. And so while you may not be able to necessarily go strictly for the build you wanted to go for, you can probably get something that's like a hybrid between that and something else. And while it'll be a little bit less effective, at least you can still play the game and you're not just getting absolutely fucking clowned on by the enemies. So Gunfire Reborn gets a thumbs up from me. Echo Point Nova is another one of those fast-paced boomer shooter style games, except the crazy thing about this game is that it's in a fucking massive open world, and you are given a crazy amount of mobility that you can use to traverse around it. And like, it's basically like you are traversing around a bunch of sky islands all the time, and you can see all of them. And as you discover more of them, you get these waypoints that you can teleport to. And within just a few seconds of clicking that button, maybe like 3 or 4, you'll be in that area. So you can play the game multiplayer with friends, you can both be on the same island, and then in 4 seconds, suddenly that guy you were playing with is all the way on the other side of the map, and the map is still loading all of that stuff. Like, it is so incredible that the game has that level of scale, and the fact that they have mobility that just feels super clean and really rewarding to use, and it's very fast-paced and all this stuff, it's really enjoyable. There's a fair bit of weapon variety too in the game, and as you complete more of the mission objectives, you can gain the ability to, you can get a new weapon that'll fit into a certain weapon slot. And then if you collect enough of particular resources, you can have more air uptime, you can have more grappling hooks, you can increase your movement speed, you can gain things that allow you to do more damage while you're in the air, to do damage to enemies that you run over with your hoverboard. It also has sort of roguelike elements, but more like I can literally build how I want to, and I'm not at the mercy of RNG. I can literally equip these 8 perks that do these things that suit the way that I want to play the game. And honestly, I already mentioned the scale, but the scale is really genuinely what sold me on the game. The gameplay loop is super fun. The music itself is pretty solid. The multiplayer is a lot of fun. The mission objectives are enjoyable to just run around and shoot people's heads off. But like, the scale of the game is actually ridiculously impressive. Friends vs. Friends is a comparatively much more tame game. You are a little animal with a little gun, and you also have an entire deck of cards you have to build, of which they can hurt people, they can buff you, they can hurt you, they can buff your teammates, they can give you weapons, they can give you distinct advantages like going invisible. You can nuke the whole goddamn battlefield if you want to. It's just a matter of what you happen to draw in your hand. The way that the game does it is there's a minimum number of cards you can have in your hand, but there's a maximum power level that you can have in your hand. So you can't just use like 6 of the most powerful cards because you need to have like 50 in your deck or whatever. And you also can't just stack your entire hand of 50 with a bunch of super powerful cards, because then you'll hit the power cap limit. So you need to find a good balance between finding things that are going to be usable for you and the character you're playing and the map you're on or whatever, as well as some of those hard-hitting power players that can easily win you the game. The one tough thing about it, you have to play a lot of games to get a lot of currency to open the packs to actually get the cards necessary. And unfortunately, you can get duplicate cards. Sometimes getting duplicate cards means that you add 1 point to that card, and once you get a certain number of them, that card becomes a little bit stronger. But sometimes you will get the card that you already have and it's already max level, and I think all you get for it is a little bit of currency or something. So sometimes you can kind of just get fucked out of not getting what you want, and I almost wish that there was like a mode that you could play that just gave everybody access to everything, because that makes the game feel a little bit more fun and fair and lets people get to experiment with what they want and what they think might be interesting before they write off the game because they don't think it's very interesting. So it's a pretty fun party game. It's basically all custom game simulator, because why would you ever bother like 1v1ing people online with it? And it is genuinely super enjoyable, even if only in bursts of like an hour at a time. Guilty Gear Strive is a game that I don't know is necessarily underrated because I don't know anything about the fighting game landscape. But Guilty Gear Strive is one of the few, other than like Brawlhalla, but again, that's a party fighting game. Guilty Gear Strive is one of the few fighting games, two-dimensional fighting games that I actually like kind of tried to get good at when I play the game. And there's a lot to like about the game. The characters themselves are genuinely really unique. So it's fun that there's a lot of interesting gimmicks with the characters. It's interesting that, you know, no one particular gimmick just absolutely shuts down the entire game and you don't get to do anything about it, especially when you play with a friend group that are like mine, where we're just okay at the game, and those moments of being just okay at the game are not constant. Like, people will go through phases of being a little worse than they were last round, right? And so it's little things like that that can just turn the tide of the game. And anybody who's played Guilty Gear Strive, you probably know how fucking banging the music is. Like, I guess as a little bit of a potential spoiler, like, I may consider doing the music for that game, because there aren't that many characters in the game, and there's certainly things I probably could talk about, and it's honestly not a particularly hard thing to do. I've just not heard anybody talk about it yet, and it genuinely didn't come into my mind until today. But Guilty Gear Strive is awesome. It's colorful, it's cartoonish, it's bombastic and big, and it's definitely, in my opinion, on the better end of like the two-dimensional fighting games of its style, personally. And the last game to close out this little series of underrated gems is one that I probably should have put in my modern loves, but unfortunately I don't think I put much into this game, much time as I probably should, which is RoboQuest. I also call this an underrated gem because it is easily, other than the Lethal Company video, it's easily the least viewed video that I've made in like the music analysis niche of my channel, because nobody fucking knows about RoboQuest apparently. Trav Guy made a video on it called like Masterclass in Doom-inspired roguelikes, I think. Friend of the channel, Dumpster Man, has made a couple videos on RoboQuest, and if you just Google RoboQuest on YouTube, you probably will find both of their videos. But the game is just so much fun, kind of for the same reasons that I was talking about with Gunfire Reborn, where every character has different gimmicks and mechanics that they do. There's upgrades that you can give to those specific characters in order to make some of the things they do stronger. There's like basically match-wide buffs that you can give. When you find certain equipment in the world, those buffs are just transferred to your character, and now suddenly you have a double jump, and you have the ability to use a jetpack, and you can slam down onto the ground really fast and deal damage. Stuff like that. But then you also have a bunch of weapons that do a bunch of really crazy things, including being able to rocket jump yourself if it's an explosive, being able to target enemy weak points really precisely if you're using a sniper, being able to inflict a bunch of dot damage if you're dealing with something like the voltaic cannon or the flamethrower or whatever they call it. There's also really dope melee weapons, like there's like dual frying pan looking mofos in that game, and the weapon variety is seriously insane, insanely good. And then you can find weapon upgrades that you can pick up and character upgrades to make the engineer's drones that he casts more powerful, or give yourself a third robot but have them be a little bit weaker, or have all of your weapons deal one specific type of elemental damage. Like there's a lot that you can do in the game, and to a certain degree there is kind of a slightly better way to build and build craft how you want to, because there's also a reroll mechanic, and there's ways to get free perks from people that you meet, and there's challenges you can do to get free perks and all this other stuff. So RoboQuest, while it is unfortunately no longer being directly supported with new content, as they just recently described in a blog post, the game as it currently stands in its story mode is really good. There's a lot of weapons you can find, lots of characters that you can find, lots of cool upgrades you can get, lots of difficulties that you can try. You can play the game with friends, or a friend, sorry, I believe it's only 2-player that you can play with, but that enhances the gameplay experience even more. RoboQuest is one of those games that I really want more people to know about, because I am truly shocked at how well put together it was, and yet how many people I feel like just never heard of it. It kind of sucks, honestly. And that should about do it. I wasn't expecting this to go over an hour and 40 minutes long. Frankly, I wasn't expecting it to go over like an hour long. I don't know why, but you know, if there's one thing I'm really good at, it's about yapping about video games, I guess. So if any of you guys have any questions about the games that I was talking about, if you need an incentive to buy them or whatever, or if you just want to gush about the game, just drop it off in the comments. And I guess while I'm here, I'm still trying to fully figure out what to do with this channel. My thought is I'm going to do gameplay commentary stuff, or otherwise smaller, less well put together projects that I otherwise don't really want to put on my main channel here. Sometimes it'll be behind the scenes videos of music that I've made. Sometimes it'll just be shooting the shit with other people, but not necessarily in the same way that my Eye for Talent podcast does. More like talking about stuff in a game that I really want to talk about, like Overwatch's meta changes and player perception of skill and random bullshit like that. I'm thinking commentary, I'm thinking behind the scenes, I'm thinking slightly more experimental stuff like this, but in general, I want to give people out there in the YouTube landscape more content, but I also don't want to tank my original channel while doing it. So anybody who happens to see this, if you're in the Discord, if you're subscribed to the main channel, if you see this video and are subscribed to this channel, please just drop any suggestions below in the comments, because I really want to try and get good feedback on what people are looking for. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of keep putting shit out there into the world, and then people are like, what the hell are you doing? And I go, that's a great question. But that's enough from me. I'll see you guys later.